So yes, we are now recorded. Okay. Great. Okay. Okay. If you are in your Google Classroom, so this will look like, okay? You go to classwork, you see that? Okay, go to classwork and then click the first reading assignment, okay? Click the first reading assignment, sorry. Okay, the view assignment. Okay, click the view assignment, okay? And then I have here an instruction, okay? Please fill out the template I sent for this reading assignment and submit it before the due date, August 11 at 2 p.m., okay? Your Genesis reading is worth 10 points. Constable reading is worth 46 points. Please download the template below to fill in your answers, then turn it in on the box to the right, okay? Okay, so I have a template ready for you. Download this, okay? And then upload it on your Google Drive, okay? You understand that? Download this template, fill in your answers, and then upload it on your Google Drive. So when you have done uploaded it in your Google Drive, click Add Create, okay? Like for example, I am acting as a student, okay? I am using my wife's account, okay, to act as a student. So if I click this, I will click Google Drive, okay? And then I will click that. That's my project, okay? And then I will click Insert, okay? And then I will turn it in, okay? Then there is a box that will pop up. You have to click Turn In, okay? Click. And then just wait until you see it and submit. That means you have turned it in. You see that? Turned in. That means you have turned in your reading assignment, okay? Any question regarding your assignment reading for next week?
Sir, sorry, na-confuse lang po ako. Saan ko kunin yung, yung reading ng commentary?
Constable commentary. Yes, if you go to Walang Pasok page, the Dropbox, on the Dropbox, it's in the Dropbox of the Walang Pasok page.
Okay po. Thank you po.
But yes, if you don't have the Constable commentary, I can post it on the stream, okay, maybe after the class, so that you can
Thank you
have.
po. Thank you po.
Sir, question.
Question regarding your assignment reading for next week.
Sir,
Yes.
question po.
Yes.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir,
Yeah,
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay lang po ba if we read out the Bible in own language? It's okay to read in our own language.
Tagalog.
Or just King James KJV?
No, in your own, that's fine. Tagalog, Chinese, Myanmar, and any translation you can read. Okay.
Sir, what if we read the Bible from Genesis? We advanced it. How can we apply that to your template?
Yes, you can do advanced, but when you write the template, you only include the assigned chapters, okay? On the week, okay, on the certain week, okay? Like for example, for next week, you will only write Genesis 1 and 2. Does it make sense, Missy?
Bali po, kahit po mag-advance kami, we will submit only yung required dun sa
Yes, only
pinabibigay nyo.
Yes.
Pero until next dun po, kung saan kami nag-stop, dun din po kami magsasign.
Doon din kayo magsasign. Oh.
Okay po. Salamat po.
Yeah, because I think you cannot do advanced reading because once you submitted your project, I will make a I will give you a score, and it will be recorded to Google Classroom. So I think it will mess up the system if you do advanced reading. If I do advanced scoring, does it make sense?
Yes po. Thank you po.
Yeah, you can do advanced reading, but then you have to do it. You have to record your assignment every week. Do the template every week, okay? According to its scheduled chapters, assigned chapters. So,
Sir,
does this make sense to you? This Google Classroom? Klaro na? Okay.
so I have a question, sir.
Yes.
For the verse memorization, can we do that in our own language or does it need to be on English?
Yes, it needs to be. I require, because it is uniform, I am using Google Forms. So I am requiring you to memorize Genesis, the verse quizzes in the King James Version, okay? Only in the King James Version, okay? Do you understand it? Okay, you are only allowed to memorize the verse quizzes in one version, King James Version. But for your reading assignment, you can do any translation. Okay lang ba? Okay. For the assigned reading, any translation, any language, that's fine. But for your verse quiz, I only allow King James Version. Okay? Para uniform. Okay? Para uniform. I'm sorry, Chinese Myanmar students. Okay? You have to memorize it in King James Version. Okay? Because that's how I made the verse quiz in Google Forms. I only use one translation. So I'm sorry about that. We can only use one translation. So what I'm going to do now is we will do a trial quiz, okay? If you can go to your Google Classroom, okay? Go to your Google Classroom. Okay, go to classwork. And then click trial quiz, okay? Click trial quiz. And then click this. This is just a trial quiz, okay? If you can do this for me, so that you will have a sense of what a verse quiz looks like, okay? On Google Form, okay? Click that, okay? And that's how it looks like when you open it, okay? So provide the right word by filling in the blank on the space provided. Succeeding box continues the flow of the verse from the preceding box, okay?
Sir,
Yes.
I already tried to do this quiz. The second box that is created the heavens, the answer there is required to be a number. Thus, I couldn't answer it.
Okay. Okay, that's my mistake. That is my mistake. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, you can. This is just a trial. I will. You can answer anything for that box. Okay. But thank you for pointing that out, Danielle. But yes, your email, you need to write it down. That's required. That's required. And then there is a question here that is also required. You have to answer it yes or no. I'm taking the quiz without the help of notes, Bible or phone, etc. So that is also required. And then if you can answer this, okay, try answering it. So I have written down the verse, but in segments, okay? So the succeeding box continues the preceding box, okay? If you can write it down and then submit it, okay? So this is how your quiz looks like, okay, for your next quiz, okay? So your next quiz will be, you can take it anytime after this class, okay? But the due date is Tuesday, 2 p.m., okay? You must have taken your quiz on that day, okay? Then don't forget to click submit, okay? Don't forget to click submit, okay? So this is just a trial, okay? So this is how, this is what your quiz looks like, okay? On Google Forms. Any question? Any question about your quiz for next week? Okay. Okay. So who got 4 points? Did you try doing this?
Is it fine to answer a wrong answer
Yes,
in
that
the
is fine.
third
That
box?
is fine. Oh, yes. Did you get 4 points, Danielle?
Just a minute, I have to answer.
Okay. Yeah, I would like, if you don't mind, please answer this and then click submit. Okay.
Yan na po ba yung verse quiz?
No, hindi. This is just a trial quiz. Okay.
Practice lang po.
Practice lang. Okay, practice lang to.
Okay lang sir kahit hindi kasi hindi ko po ma-out yung Zoom ko dito.
Okay, that's fine. That is
Naka-phone po kasi.
And by the way, your answer is case sensitive. Make sure that you type the right case. Like most of the answers should be answered in small letters. Okay. Except if there is word God referring to the true God, the first letter should be capitalized. Okay. So make sure that your caps lock is off. Okay, when you type the answer. Okay.
Sir, it says, sir, that it needs to be numbered down.
Yes. Somebody asked me a question.
It says, sir, must be a number, but it should be the or THE. So
Yes,
I
yes.
don't know how to submit that.
Yes. There's a mistake there. That's a mistake there.
Thank you po, sir.
This would be 4 points. Anyone among you got 4 points?
Sir, hindi niya masubmit eh. Pero na-fill out namin.
Okay. So you can submit this form. Okay, like for example, if I do this in the beginning, God. Okay, you're right. Must be a number. So I'll just try number 1. Okay. In the beginning, God created the heavens. The answer should be the. Okay. The heavens. I'll just put number 1 there. The heavens and the earth. Okay. If I click, you're right. Nothing works when you submit. Click the submit button. Yeah, I will fix this. Yeah, for your real quiz. This is just a trial one, but this is how it looks like. Okay, when you open your quiz for your next week. Okay. So any question regarding your quiz or your project? That will be for next week. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So make sure that you always check your stream. Like for example here, remember on the left side of the Google Classroom, there will be assignment posted here. Okay, so it will show up on the left side. Okay, on the left side. Okay. So we are done with that. Okay, last time we talked about Pentateuch in general. Did you see this slide? Okay, so last meeting we talked about Pentateuch in general, and Pentateuch is not, we cannot find the word Pentateuch in the Bible, right? Somebody coined the term, and the first one who coined the term is Tertullian, okay? Around AD 200, okay? So it comes from the Greek word penta meaning 5, theukos meaning vessel, container. And the 5-volume book of Moses is also known as the books of the law of Moses, the books of Moses, I mean, okay? The books of Moses. And we talked about the legal sections of Pentateuch last time, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 of those, okay? You all have this in your blanks, okay? And then just for clarification, not everything in Pentateuch is all about law, okay? If we mean law as formal legislative material or commandments prescribing human behavior, because a lot of Pentateuch are stories, okay, that inspire us. So it's kind of misleading when we call Pentateuch as the law, because it's not all about law, okay? There's a lot of stories in Pentateuch, in Genesis, for example, and Exodus and Leviticus, as we all know, okay? But for simplicity's sake, and according to tradition, they call the first five volumes of Moses as the law, or the books of Moses, okay, or the law. Okay. And we talk about different terminologies, okay, of the word law, okay, in Hebrew. There are 613 laws, by the way, in Pentateuch. So those are some of the Hebrew words, okay, referring to the law of God. And also last time we talked about the Hebrew name of the books. In the Hebrew canon, they name the first 5 books of Moses differently, okay? We are following the English canon. We call it Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. But in the Hebrew canon, they have a different name of these 5 books, okay? Like for example, the first book is called Bereshit, okay? Coming from the first word of Genesis, which is Bereshit, okay? Which literally means in the beginning, okay? Exodus in Hebrew is Shemot. That's how they call the book of Exodus in the Hebrew canon, okay? In Leviticus, Vayikra, Numbers, Bamidbar, and then Devarim for Deuteronomy, okay? And we also talk about the 2 divisions of Pentateuch. The first division is Genesis 1 to 11. The second division covers from Genesis 12 to Deuteronomy, to the last part of Deuteronomy. And this is the summary of each book, as I have mentioned last time, okay? And take note of those words. By the way, have you received your physical copy of your class notebook yet? Have you received it? Not yet.
Not yet.
Maybe next week you will receive it, okay? But for now, just use the electronic copy I sent you, okay? So those are the summaries of each book, okay? And also I mentioned to you last time that Pentateuch as a whole is filled with references referring to Jesus Christ, okay? Genesis 3:15 talks about the seed that will crush the serpent. That's referring to Jesus Christ, okay? In Genesis 5 verse 29 talks about the Messiah, okay? Who will deliver, okay? Who will be the ultimate deliverer, okay? The royal line of Judah in Genesis 49 verse 10, okay? Passover lamb in Exodus 12 foreshadows the perfect sacrifice of Jesus Christ, okay? And all the sacrifices in Leviticus, okay, also foreshadow the sacrifice of the coming Messiah, okay? And even the priesthood, all the systems in all the rituals are all foreshadowing the coming Messiah, okay? The bronze serpent, the prophecy of Balaam, and even the coming prophet in Deuteronomy 18:15-19 talks about Jesus Christ, okay? We know that Jesus Christ is the ultimate prophet, the ultimate priest, and he is the ultimate king, okay? Now, before we go to the proofs, if somebody asks you, how do you know that Moses is the writer of the first 5 books of the Old Testament? Like if there is a liberal who will ask you that question, how would you answer that liberal person? Okay. Yes, I have mentioned to you last time that the Pentateuch itself testifies that Moses wrote it. And there's a lot of verses that demonstrate that. Okay. It's very clear. In other words, there are a lot of internal evidences that point to the authorship of Moses. Okay. Also, other Old Testament books bear witness to Mosaic authorship. Okay, referring to as the Law of Moses. The New Testament also bears witness to Mosaic authorship, okay, of the Pentateuch, and eyewitness details appear in the account of the Exodus, which suggests an actual participant in the events, but which would be beyond the knowledge of an author who lived centuries later. Okay? Because the liberals would say that the writer of the first 5 books of the Old Testament is someone who lived after all the events of Pentateuch took place. So after Moses died, somebody wrote Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's what they said, okay? So for them, the writer lived around the first millennium BC, around, like for example, 9th century BC. That's years, thousands of years after, okay? The last event of Pentateuch took place, okay? But we believe that Moses wrote Genesis to Deuteronomy because we can see, okay, if we read Deuteronomy, there is a sense that the writer is an actual participant in the events, okay? He witnessed firsthand the events, okay, that he wrote, okay, from Genesis to Deuteronomy, especially from Exodus to Deuteronomy, because we know that Moses, he was born after the events in Genesis, okay? And also the author shows a thorough acquaintance with Egypt, okay? And also the author shows a consistently foreign or extra-Palestinian viewpoint, okay? Remember that Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, okay? The events in these books, okay, took place not in Canaan, but prior to the arrival of the people of Israel to the land of Canaan. And if you read Genesis to Deuteronomy, the author shows a consistently foreign or extra-Palestinian viewpoint, okay, so far as Canaan is concerned. And that tells us that the writer of Pentateuch did not live after the events of these 5 books, but he lived during, okay, during this time, okay, from during the time of Exodus, okay, during the time of Exodus, and that is of course Moses. Okay? And the atmosphere of Exodus through Numbers is unmistakably that of the desert, okay? Because in Canaan it's really agricultural, right? This is pre-Canaan period, okay? Not of an agricultural people settled in their land for nearly 1,000 years. Okay? And of course, there are customs that existed in the 2nd millennium BC. By the way, 2nd millennium BC spanned the years 2000 to 1000 BC. So that's 2nd millennium BC. 1st millennium BC covered the years 1000 to 1 BC. Okay? So if you read Genesis until Deuteronomy, the customs that we can observe in these books existed in the 2nd millennium, okay? But did not continue into the 1st millennium. And of course, there are archaisms, okay, in language that are only, okay, present during the second millennium, okay? And the writer must be living during the second millennium, not the first millennium. Because liberals would say that the writer lived during the first millennium, okay? But we do not believe that. We believe Moses, who lived during the second millennium BC, is the writer of the book of Pentateuch. And of course, there is remarkable unity of arrangement, okay, which underlies the entire Pentateuch and links it together into a progressive whole. Of course, he was raised in the court of Pharaoh where he learned to read and write, okay? Now let's talk about this. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Okay, last time I just mentioned this to you, but I did not share to you the verse, okay? Behind these 5 reasons why Moses wrote the Pentateuch, okay? If you notice in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, okay? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and if you will open your Bible in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, okay? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1, okay? The Apostle Paul talks about the experiences of Israel during the wilderness, okay? In the wilderness. In verse 1, Moses says, "Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant how that all our fathers," referring to the Old Testament Israel, "were under the cloud and all passed through the sea." Okay? And in verse 1, Moses is referring to Exodus 13, verse 21, Exodus 14, verse 22. And what happened in Exodus 13, verse 21? Okay? There was a pillar of cloud, right? There was a pillar of cloud leading the nation of Israel as they crossed the Red Sea, okay? So this is referring to the events in Exodus. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 2, Moses says, "And we're all baptized unto Moses in the cloud," okay? "And in the sea." Verse 3, "And did eat all the same spiritual meat," okay? Referring to Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3, okay? And in verse 4, in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul says, "And did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ." Okay? And the reference for that is Exodus 17, verse 6. In verse 5, "But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness." And the reference for that is Numbers 14, verse 29 and 37. So in other words, Moses, in these 5 verses in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, okay, use a lot of references from Pentateuch, okay, Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And all of these events in Pentateuch, okay, were written to warn us through Israel's example. That's why in verse 6, Paul says, "Now these things, what happened in the Pentateuch, in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, including Genesis, of course, they were written for our example, okay? So that we will learn from the mistakes of the nation of Israel, okay? Another reason why Moses wrote the Pentateuch is to remind the Israelites of one of God's determined purposes to eradicate Amalek, okay? If you will open your Bible, Exodus 17, verse 14, okay? The Lord told Moses, "Write this as a memorial in a book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven." So this is one of the purposes why Pentateuch was written. And of course, to record the nature of God's covenant with the Israelites. We know that in the Pentateuch, we learn about the Abrahamic covenant. We learn about the Mosaic covenant, okay? That institutionalized the nation of Israel, okay? And of course, to record stage by stage the journeying of the Israelites in the wilderness. In Numbers 33, verse 2. Let me read this to you. Numbers 33, verse 2. Okay? And at the Lord's command, Moses, Numbers 33, verse 2. And by the way, when we are in Zoom meeting, please have your Bibles ready with you, okay? In Numbers 33, verse 2, Moses wrote their goings out, okay? And this is one internal evidence that indeed Moses is the writer of Pentateuch, Okay? Moses wrote their goings out according to their journeys by the commandment of the Lord. Okay, God, the Lord commanded Moses to write down the experiences, all the travels of Israel. And so Moses did that. And these are their journeys according to their goings out. So this is one clear evidence, Numbers 33 verse 2, that Moses wrote the Pentateuch. Okay? And of course, to serve as a witness on God's behalf against his people. Okay? When they abandon him, they are abandoning the only rock. Okay? And I think that's where we ended last time, right? Okay, let's continue. Date for writing of Pentateuch. Okay, Genesis. Okay, so Exodus took place around 1446. Okay, so Genesis must have written during the Exodus between 1446 and 1407 BC. Okay, that's a span of 40 years from Exodus until their wilderness wanderings. That's around 40 years. Okay, between this span of years, Genesis was written. Okay, Exodus the same. Okay, the same span of years, 1446 to 1407 BC. Leviticus is different, 1445. Okay, after the Exodus. Okay, and there is a reason for that. If you will read Numbers, Exodus 40 verse 17. Okay. Okay, Exodus 40 verse 17 says the tabernacle was set up in the first month of the second year, okay, of the first day of the month. And we know that Leviticus is about the laws, right? The laws, okay? And the laws that we read in Leviticus may have been given in its entirety during the first month of the second year after the Exodus, and that's around 1445 BC, okay? And so I'm giving you the reference for that. That is Exodus 40 verse 17, okay? Exodus 40, chapter 40, verse 17, okay? In Numbers, the same as Genesis and Exodus. It must have been written around after the Exodus and during the wilderness wanderings, okay? Deuteronomy at the end of the wilderness wanderings, okay? Deuteronomy must have been written, okay, around 1407 BC, okay? Okay, any question regarding the date for writing of each book of Pentateuch? Any question?
I just want to clarify po,
Yes.
Dr. Atan. So are we saying that Genesis and Exodus were written like simultaneously at the same time, or are we saying that within that span of 40 years, these two books were written like probably
Yes.
one after the other?
Yes, you are right. That's my feeling. Okay, within those span of years, perhaps Moses wrote first Genesis. Remember, he was on the top of the mountain. Remember, for 40 days and 40 nights. I have this gut feeling that during those days, when Moses was on the top of the mountain alone with God, remember that? He wrote Genesis, okay? He wrote Genesis. Then after that, sometime during the wilderness wanderings, he wrote Exodus. You get it, John? That's my
Yes
feeling.
po.
Yes.
Thank you po.
Simultaneous, you're right. Genesis was written first, perhaps. That's my feeling. And then Exodus was written after Genesis. Okay? And then Numbers and then Deuteronomy. Okay? And then the last is Leviticus. Okay? 1445. Any other question? Thank you for the. So this is an estimate, okay? 1446 to 1407, okay? Because the Bible is not explicit, okay? When this book was written, okay? This is just a the best guess that we can give, okay, for the dates of each of these books. Oh, I have mentioned to you, I have alluded to you, this to you before about the liberal attacks on the authorship of the Pentateuch, because there are those who will say that it is not Moses. It was not Moses who wrote the Pentateuch. Okay? Pentateuch was written years, maybe thousands of years after the events of Pentateuch took place. That's what they say. Okay. So liberals, critics denied the unity of the Pentateuch by postulating a theory known as, now take note of this theory, JEDP theory. This is a very complicated theory. Okay. But I'll give you the gist of this theory. The JEDP theory is also sometimes known as the Wellhausen documentary hypothesis, okay? Named after the man J. Wellhausen, who popularized it, okay? And the JEDP theory is too complicated to discuss in detail in this class, but it essentially asserts that the Pentateuch consists of 4 documents, okay, or pieces, each composed by different authors called editors or redactors. In other words, liberals contend that Pentateuch was written by 4 different authors or editors. And then somebody, okay, somebody compiled all of these documents, 4 documents by different editors, into one volume, as we all know now as the Pentateuch, okay? The final editor is called the redactor, okay? So what are these 4 documents? Now, why do they say that there are 4 documents? And here are their explanations. Number 1, okay? Okay, these are the 4 documents. Okay, the Yahwist, okay? The J document, okay? And the J document, this says, uses the tetragrammaton. Do you know what the tetragrammaton is? That's the Hebrew word, that's the Hebrew name of God. There are only 4 letters in Hebrew, okay? Referring to Yahweh. YHWH. That is the so-called tetragrammaton, okay? Originally, Hebrew doesn't have a vowels, okay, on the words. Okay, later, I think the Masoretes put vowels in these words. Okay, so this J document, they said, uses the name Yahweh. Okay, or the 4-letter word YHWH to refer to God. Okay. Okay, that's the first document. Another document is the E document, and in this E document, the most prominent name of God that's being used is the name Elohim, okay? And if you encounter in Hebrew, for example, the word Elohim, that's coming from the E document, okay? And if you read the Hebrew Bible and you encounter the tetragrammaton, the word Yahweh, they said that that's coming from the J document, okay? And the D document is called the Deuteronomist. This writer wrote Deuteronomy and other historical books. And the 4th document is called the priestly document, okay? And the editor of this document wrote Leviticus, okay? So there are 4 editors who wrote the Pentateuch. That's what they said, okay? Now, aside from the fact that there are different names used to refer to God, JEDP proponents argue that there are discernible differences in linguistic style. So their logic is this: there are different. We observe different linguistic styles in Pentateuch. That means there are different authors. Okay, and if we can respond this way, can an author uses different linguistic styles? Of course, he can, right? And then a final redactor, an unknown person, compiled all of these resources to form into one volume known as the Pentateuch. Okay. There are 4 editors. Then the final redactor compiled all of these 4 documents, the JEDP documents, into one volume known as the Pentateuch. Okay. The final redaction is supposed to have taken place in the post-exilic era during the time of Ezra. Okay. And others think that the final redactor must have been Ezra, okay, in the 5th century BC. So that's like thousands of years after the last event that took place in Deuteronomy. Okay. Okay, why don't we believe the JEDP theory? Okay. Number 1, the author of Pentateuch uses different names to highlight a character of God. It does not mean that there are different authors behind these names. Okay. Okay, for the proponents of the JEDP theory, different names of God means different authors. But we know that Moses uses different names of God to highlight a character of God. Okay. An author can use different linguistic styles in his writing. Okay. If you are a writer, you will know this. You will use different style if you use a different genre. If you write poem, you will use a different style. If you will write stories, you will use a different style. Okay. And just like Pentateuch. Okay. In the case of the Pentateuch, we can strongly assume that Moses uses different styles as he wrote history. Okay. Like Genesis, Numbers, Covenant Stipulations, and Exodus, Deuteronomy. And if the genre is ritual laws, then that's a different style too. Okay, as we can observe in the book of Leviticus. Okay, and here's the biggest problem: no JEDP document has been discovered in history. Okay, no JEDP document has been discovered in history. Okay. So, any question regarding JEDP theory? The New Testament unites in pointing out that Moses wrote the Pentateuch. Okay, that's very clear.
Sir, I have a question po.
Yes.
Like
Shen?
for example, sir, we were asked by someone, like medyo piloso po ang tanong na if Moses really wrote the Pentateuch, how
Yes.
did he write it? Meron ba siyang pen or how do we answer that?
They used a scroll, diba, during the Old Testament times, and I forget the writing pen that they use. I believe they use an ink, okay, to write it down on the scroll. So just think of the scroll. They roll it down. Remember that?
Mhm.
Parchment skins, and then they have an ink. So that's where they write the books, okay, on the scrolls, parchments made from animal skins or plants. Like, have you heard of papyri plants? So those are the materials they use where they write their writings.
Okay po. Thank you.
Does it make sense, Shen?
Yes po.
I do not know all the details. Okay, I would like to research that. What materials do they use? Okay, but we believe it's scrolls made of parchment skins, out of parchment, made of animal skins. I mean, okay, parchment out of animal skins and made of plants that they dried. Okay, and they have like this stick, and where they dip it in an ink and they write it on the scroll. Okay, that's how they do that.
Yes, sir. And it's safe to think that Moses personally wrote the Pentateuch po na wala siyang tagasulat or
Wala siyang amanuensis.
apo.
Remember when he was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights? He was with God alone. And I believe during that time, okay? Siya lang, di ba? When he was on that mountain, he was only by himself, and of course, with God. So I believe wala siyang amanuensis. In the case of Paul, the Apostle Paul, meron siyang secretary, di ba? Sino yung secretary ni Apostle Paul? I think si Silvanus ba yun? Okay? Si Silvanus. But I think for Moses, in the case of Moses, wala siyang secretary. Siya lang talaga. As far as I know, okay? As far as I know, walang secretary si Moses. But for Paul, it's different. Kasi di ba may sakit siya sa mata? He has this eye problem. So he uses an amanuensis to help him write the books of the Bible. Well, thank you very much. And I will post on Google Classroom, okay? I will post on Google Classroom your first verse quiz. So you can take the quiz anytime after this class, but the due date is next week, Tuesday, okay? Is that clear?
Yes po. Thank you po.
Well, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me through email, or you can write, you can post a question on Google Classroom, the stream section. You can text me, you can PM me on Messenger. And thank you again very much for your time. See you on Tuesday, okay? Tuesday, August 11. Looking forward to reading your quizzes, okay? Getting your quizzes.
Thank you po.
Reading assignments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you po.
Thank you po. Thank you very much.
Salamat po.
Thank you very much. Si
Wala. Ito ba si Sir Anton?
So the next class is Christian family. The same room.
John, may question ako.
Go ahead.
Ano nga yung tanong ko? Nakalimutan ko na ito.
Ah,
Wait lang.
so regarding sa Pentateuch, binigay pala yan ni Sir sa unang klase niya sa PowerPoint. I forgot to mention that.
Recorded
message
ba
ko na
yung-
lang siya.
Recorded ba
Hindi
yung last class?
recorded. Nakalimutan niya yung
Hindi.
first. Nakalimutan niya
Na-miss
yung
ko.
record.
Paano kaya yan?
But actually, dinaanan naman niya lahat ng diniscuss niya in general